The morning sun cast long shadows across the university courtyard as Kate adjusted her worn leather satchel for the 100th time. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the autumn chill that swept through Cambridge, but from the weight of the decision she had made during the sleepless hours of the previous night. The acceptance letter from the prestigious art program in Florence lay folded in her jacket pocket, its crisp edges a constant reminder of the choice that would change everything. She had been walking these same stone paths for 3 years, her footsteps creating a familiar rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. But today was different. Today, every step felt like a countdown to goodbye. The Gothic spires of the ancient buildings seemed to lean in closer, as if they too knew that something precious was about to end. William would be waiting for her in their usual spot by the old oak tree near the library. It was where they had first spoken, where they had shared their first kiss, where they had planned a future that now seemed as fragile as morning mist. Kate's chest tightened as she remembered how his eyes had lit up when she told him about applying to the program months ago. He had been so proud, so supportive, never once suggesting that her dreams might tear them apart. The courtyard was unusually quiet for a Tuesday morning. Most students were either in lectures or still nursing hangovers from the previous night's festivities. Kate was grateful for the solitude. She needed these final moments to gather her courage, to find the words that would somehow make sense of what felt impossible to explain. As she rounded the corner near the philosophy building, she caught sight of him. William sat beneath their tree, his dark hair catching the golden light as he bent over a book. Even from a distance, she could see the concentration in his posture, the way his brow furrowed slightly when he was deep in thought. He had always been like that, completely absorbed in whatever captured his interest, whether it was ancient history, a challenging chess problem, or listening to her ramble about color theory and brushwork techniques. Kate paused, allowing herself this moment to simply observe him. In a few hours, this would become a memory. The way the light filtered through the leaves above him, casting dancing shadows across his face. The casual way he had rolled up his sleeves, revealing the small scar on his forearm from a childhood accident he had told her about on their second date. The peaceful expression that would soon transform into confusion, then hurt, then something she could not bear to imagine. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother, asking if she had made her decision about Florence. Kate quickly silenced it without reading the full message. Her mother had been pushing for this opportunity since the acceptance arrived, calling it the chance of a lifetime. And it was. Kate knew that. The program only accepted 12 students worldwide each year. To be chosen was an honor that could launch her career in ways she had only dreamed of. But, as she watched William turn a page, his lips moving slightly as he read, she wondered if any career was worth losing him. They had met during her second year, his third. Kate had been struggling with a particularly challenging painting, trying to capture the play of light on water for her advanced studio class. She had set up her easel by the river, frustrated by her inability to convey the constant movement and change. William had been jogging past when he stopped, not to look at her painting, but to warn her about a family of swans that had been aggressive towards students all week. "They're particularly territorial this time of year," he had said, slightly out of breath, his running shirt damp with sweat. "Might want to keep your distance." Kate had looked up from her palette, annoyed at the interruption, but something in his gentle manner made her smile instead of snap. "I think I can handle a few birds," she had replied. As if summoned by her confidence, the largest swan had chosen that moment to emerge from the reeds, wings spread, neck extended in an unmistakable threat display. William had quickly positioned himself between Kate and the bird, speaking in low, calm tones until it retreated. "You were saying?" He had grinned, and Kate had found herself laughing despite her embarrassment. They had talked for over an hour that day, Kate cleaning her brushes while William cooled down from his run. She learned that he was studying medieval history with a focus on manuscript illumination, that he had spent the previous summer working on an archaeological dig in Scotland, and that he had never met anyone who could make colors seem alive the way she did. Now, 18 months later, Kate knew everything about him. She knew that he talked in his sleep, usually about Vikings or Saxon kings. She knew that he made terrible coffee, but excellent toast soldiers for soft-boiled eggs. She knew that he cried during certain movies, but would never admit it. She knew that he wanted to teach, to share his passion for history with students who might otherwise find the past boring and irrelevant. She also knew that he had been offered a position in a PhD program here at Cambridge, with funding that would cover the next 4 years of his studies. It was everything he had worked toward, his own dream finally, within reach. The timing of her opportunity in Florence could not have been worse. William looked up suddenly, as if sensing her presence. His face brightened immediately, the smile that had first captured her heart spreading across his features. He closed his book and stood, tall and lean in his faded jeans and navy sweater. Kate felt her resolve waver as he waved, his enthusiasm infectious even across the distance between them. She forced herself to move forward, each step bringing her closer to the conversation that would change everything. As she approached, she could see the questions starting to form in his eyes. They knew each other too well for secrets. He could read her moods in the tilt of her head, the set of her shoulders, the way she held her mouth when something was troubling her. "You look like someone stole your favorite paintbrush," he said softly as she reached him. It was exactly the kind of gentle teasing that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. Kate tried to smile but felt it falter before it fully formed. "We need to talk," she said, the words coming out more abruptly than she had intended. William's expression shifted, becoming more serious. He had always been intuitive, able to sense when something important was happening. "Of course," he said, gesturing to the space beside him on the wooden bench someone had placed beneath the tree years ago. "What's on your mind?" Kate remained standing, knowing that if she sat next to him, if she felt the warmth of his presence beside her, she might lose her nerve entirely. The letter in her pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. "The Florence program," she began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "Yes," William prompted gently. "Have you heard back from them?" Kate reached into her pocket and pulled out the letter, its official seal catching the light. William's eyes followed her movement, and she saw understanding begin to dawn in his expression even before she spoke. "I got in," she said simply. For a moment, William's face was transformed by pure joy. "Kate, that's incredible," he started to say, rising from the bench as if to embrace her. But then he saw her expression, saw the tears that had begun to gather in her eyes despite her efforts to remain composed, and his celebration died on his lips. "When do you leave?" he asked quietly. "Classes start in January. I would need to be there by the first week of the new year to get settled, handle visa paperwork, find housing." Kate's voice sounded strange to her own ears, too clinical, too detached for something that was tearing her apart. William nodded slowly, processing the information. Kate could practically see his mind working, calculating the timeline, understanding the implications. It was already November. They would have less than 2 months. "That's wonderful, Kate," he said, and she could hear him trying to inject enthusiasm into his voice. "Really wonderful. You've worked so hard for this." "Have I?" Kate asked, the question surprising them both. "Because right now it feels like the worst thing that could have happened." William was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "You don't want to go," he said, not really a question. "I don't want to leave you," Kate clarified. "That's not the same thing, isn't it?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Kate had been wrestling with this very distinction all night, trying to separate her professional desires from her personal fears. She had dreamed of studying in Florence since she first learned about the program as an undergraduate. The chance to work with master artists, to study techniques that had been passed down through generations, to immerse herself in the birthplace of Renaissance art. It was everything she had ever wanted. Everything except William. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I wanted this more than anything. But now you're having second thoughts because of me," William finished. There was no accusation in his voice, just a quiet sadness that made Kate's heart ache. "Not because of you," Kate said quickly. "Because of us. Because of what we have here." William walked a few steps away, his hands in his pockets, looking out across the courtyard toward the distant spires. "Tell me about the program," he said. "Really tell me. What would you be doing there?" Kate hesitated, unsure why he was asking. But something in his tone made her answer honestly. "The first semester focuses on classical techniques. Fresco, tempera, oil painting methods that most people only read about. I'd be working with professors who trained with masters whose lineages go back centuries. The second semester is independent study, developing a portfolio under individual mentorship. And after that, the connections alone could change everything. Alumni of the program are working in major museums, running galleries, teaching at prestigious institutions. It's not just about what I'd learned there. It's about the doors it would open." William nodded, still not looking at her. "It sounds like exactly what you need for your career." "Yes," Kate said quietly. "It is." "Then, you have to go." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. She had expected him to fight for them, to suggest alternatives, to ask her to choose him instead of Florence. His immediate acceptance felt like abandonment, even though she recognized the generosity in it. Just like that, she asked. You're not going to try to talk me out of it. William turned back to her then, and Kate was surprised to see tears in his eyes. How could I do that? He asked. How could I ask you to give up your dreams for me? What kind of person would that make me? The kind of person who loves me enough to want me to stay, Kate replied before she could stop herself. No, William said firmly. The kind of person who loves you is the one who wants you to have everything you deserve, even if it breaks his heart. They stood looking at each other across the small distance that suddenly felt like an ocean. Kate realized that this was the moment she had been dreading, but also the moment that proved everything she already knew about William's character. He was putting her happiness above his own, just as he always had. What about us? She whispered. William's smile was heartbreaking in its tenderness. We'll figure something out, he said. Long distance, visits when we can afford them, video calls. People make it work. But, even as he said it, Kate could see in his eyes that he didn't believe it would be enough. 2 years was a long time. They were both young, both at crucial points in their careers. The distance would strain them in ways they couldn't even imagine yet. William, she started, but he shook his head. Don't, he said gently. Don't make this harder than it already is. You're going to Florence, and you're going to be amazing there. And I'm going to be proud of you every single day. Kate felt the tears she had been holding back finally spill over. I love you, she said, the words carrying all the weight of what felt like goodbye. I love you too, William replied. That's why this is the right thing to do. They stood there in the dappled sunlight, surrounded by the ancient walls that had witnessed countless stories of love and loss, triumph and heartbreak. Students passed by in the distance, absorbed in their own dramas and concerns, unaware that they were witnessing a moment that would define 2 lives forever. Kate wanted to memorize everything about this moment. The way William's hair caught the light, the patient sadness in his expression, the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the autumn air. She wanted to hold on to it all, to create a perfect memory that she could carry with her across an ocean. But already she could feel the moment slipping away, transforming from present reality into something that would soon belong to the past. Time was moving forward, as it always did, carrying them toward a future that would be fundamentally different from anything they had imagined together. When will you tell them yes? William asked. Kate realized she hadn't actually made the decision yet, not fully. She had known, walking across the courtyard, what she would probably choose. But hearing William's reaction, seeing his immediate acceptance and support, somehow made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Soon, she said. I need to respond by the end of the week. Then, we have time, William said. A little time. Kate nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They had time, but not enough. There would never be enough time for everything they still wanted to say, everything they still wanted to do together. The university bells began to chime, marking the hour. Soon the courtyard would fill with students rushing between classes, and their private moment would be interrupted by the demands of ordinary life. Kate realized that from now on, every moment with William would feel precious and finite, shadowed by the knowledge of what was coming. I should go, she said finally. I have a tutorial in 20 minutes. William nodded. Of course. We'll talk later. Yes, Kate said. Later. But, as she turned to walk away, she felt the weight of all the conversations they would need to have in the coming weeks. How to tell their friends. How to spend their remaining time together. How to say goodbye properly when the time came. As she walked away from him, Kate didn't look back. She was afraid that if she did, she might run back to him and beg him to ask her to stay. And she was even more afraid that he wouldn't. The path to her tutorial led her past the art building where she had spent countless hours over the past 3 years. Through the tall windows, she could see students working at their easels, lost in the process of creation. Soon she would be doing the same thing in a studio in Florence, surrounded by new faces and new possibilities. But, as she climbed the stone steps to her tutorial, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking away from the most important part of her life. And she wondered if any amount of artistic achievement would ever fill the space that William's absence would leave behind. The weeks that followed their conversation in the courtyard passed in a strange blur of heightened emotion and forced normalcy. Kate found herself caught between 2 worlds, the familiar rhythm of university life in Cambridge and the growing reality of her impending departure for Florence. Every shared meal, every study session, every quiet evening in William's small flat above the bookshop carried an undercurrent of bittersweet awareness that their time together was counting down. William had thrown himself into helping Kate prepare for the move with a determination that was both touching and heartbreaking. He researched neighborhoods in Florence, helped her practice basic Italian phrases, and even convinced his medievalist colleagues to share contacts they had at Italian universities. His enthusiasm was genuine, but Kate could see the effort it cost him in the way his smile sometimes faltered when he thought she wasn't looking. They had decided, without ever discussing it explicitly, to pretend that everything was normal. They still met for coffee between classes, still spent lazy Sunday mornings reading in bed, still walked hand in hand through the narrow Cambridge streets they had explored together so many times before. But underneath the surface of their routine, Kate could feel something shifting, like tectonic plates moving slowly toward an inevitable earthquake. The first crack in their careful facade appeared during a dinner party at their friend Sarah's flat 3 weeks after Kate received her acceptance letter. The small gathering included their usual group, Sarah and her boyfriend Marcus, twins Emma and Lucy, who shared a passion for Victorian literature, and James, a philosophy student whose dry humor had entertained them all through countless pub evenings. The conversation had turned to post-graduation plans, as it often did these days. Marcus was starting a banking job in London, the twins were both pursuing master's degrees, and James was taking a gap year to travel through Southeast Asia. When someone asked Kate about her plans, she found herself struggling to answer with the casual confidence she had practiced. Florence, she said simply, hoping to avoid elaboration. But Sarah's face lit up with excitement. The art program? Kate, that's incredible. When do you leave? January. Kate replied, glancing at William, who was studying his wine glass with unusual intensity. How exciting. Emma chimed in. And, William, are you going to visit her there? The question hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. Kate and William had talked around this subject, but never addressed it directly. Flights to Italy were expensive, especially on a graduate student's budget. The program would be demanding, with little time for entertaining visitors. And underneath all the practical considerations was the unspoken question of whether their relationship would survive the separation long enough to make visits meaningful. We'll see, William said diplomatically. It's a big opportunity for Kate. She'll need to focus on making the most of it. Kate heard the subtext in his words, the gentle way he was already beginning to create distance between them. It was probably wise, she realized. Easier for both of them if they started the process of letting go gradually rather than trying to maintain an impossible connection across thousands of miles. But wisdom didn't make it hurt any less. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Kate found herself unable to concentrate. She watched William laugh at James's stories about his disastrous attempts to learn Thai, watched him engage Sarah in a debate about the best walking routes through the Scottish Highlands, watched him be himself in all the ways that had made her fall in love with him. And she realized that this was what she would miss most. Not just William himself, but William in the world, interacting with their friends, being part of the community they had built together. Later that evening, as they walked back to William's flat through streets slick with November rain, Kate finally voiced what had been troubling her all night. You're already pulling away from me, she said, not accusingly, but with the sadness of recognition. William stopped walking, turning to face her under the amber glow of a street lamp. Rain dotted his glasses, making his eyes look fractured and distant. I don't mean to be, he said quietly. I'm trying to make this easier for both of us. By pretending I'm already gone. By not making promises we might not be able to keep. Kate felt a flash of anger, hot and unexpected. So that's it. We just start acting like strangers now to save ourselves the trouble later? That's not what I meant, William said, reaching for her hand. Kate, you know that's not what I meant. But Kate pulled away, suddenly, furious at his reasonableness, his careful consideration of everyone's feelings. Maybe it is what you meant, she said. Maybe this is just easier for you than admitting you don't want to try to make it work. Don't, William said, his voice sharper than she had ever heard it. Don't make this about me not caring enough. You know that's not true. Do I? Kate challenged. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've already decided this is over. They stared at each other through the drizzle, both breathing hard, both saying things they hadn't meant to say. Kate realized that this was their first real fight, and it was happening because they loved each other too much to know how to let go properly. I'm scared, William said suddenly, his voice breaking slightly. I'm terrified that if we try to do long distance, it will just drag out the pain. I'm afraid that we'll spend 2 years missing each other, being miserable, and then You'll meet someone in Florence who can give you everything I can't, and I'll be the fool who held you back." Kate felt her anger drain away, replaced by a deep ache of understanding. "And I'm afraid," she said, "that if we don't even try, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me for a career opportunity." They stood in the rain, looking at each other with a clarity that was both painful and precious. This was the heart of their dilemma, Kate realized. They loved each other enough to want what was best for the other person, even when they weren't sure what that was. "Come here," William said softly, and Kate stepped into his arms. He held her tightly, and she could feel him memorizing the moment just as she was. The rain continued to fall around them, but they stood still, two figures creating a small island of warmth in the cold night. "I love you," Kate whispered into his shoulder. "I love you too," he replied. "That's never been the question." They walked the rest of the way to his flat in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. The fight had cleared the air between them, allowing them to acknowledge what they had been dancing around for weeks. They were going to try to make long-distance work, but they were both smart enough to know that love alone might not be enough. The next morning, Kate woke to the smell of William making breakfast in his tiny kitchen. She lay in bed for a few minutes, listening to the familiar sounds of him moving around, opening cabinets, filling the kettle. Soon these sounds would become memories, replaced by the unfamiliar acoustics of wherever she ended up living in Florence. She found him at the stove, making scrambled eggs with the methodical precision he brought to everything. His hair was still messy from sleep, and he wore the old Cambridge sweatshirt she had given him for his birthday the previous year. Kate realized she wanted to remember him exactly like this. Domestic, unguarded, completely himself in the space they had created together. "Good morning," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "Morning," he replied, leaning back into her embrace. "I was thinking we should make some plans." "What kind of plans?" William turned in her arms to face her. "Things we want to do together before you leave. Places we want to go, experiences we want to have. I don't want to spend our last weeks together just counting down the days." Kate felt her heart lift for the first time in weeks. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." Over breakfast, they made a list. Some items were practical. Kate needed to buy winter clothes for the Italian climate. They should take photos together to have during the separation. But others were purely sentimental. They wanted to visit the place by the river where they first met, to have dinner at the small Italian restaurant where William had first told her he loved her, to spend a night in London seeing a show and pretending to be sophisticated. "What about Christmas?" Kate asked, suddenly, realizing they hadn't discussed the holidays. "What about it? I'll still be here for Christmas. Do you want to spend it together?" William was quiet for a moment. "Do you think that's wise? Won't it make leaving harder?" Kate considered this. He was probably right. Spending Christmas together, exchanging gifts, being surrounded by the warmth and intimacy of the holiday season, would make their goodbye even more difficult. But the alternative, spending their last Christmas apart, seemed worse. "Maybe harder is okay," she said finally. "Maybe we're supposed to feel the weight of this." William nodded slowly. "Then yes, I'd like to spend Christmas with you." They finished their breakfast and began the first of many deliberate adventures over the following weeks. They visited the Fitzwilliam Museum and stood before paintings Kate had studied in her art history classes, talking about brushwork and composition with the easy intimacy of shared interests. They took a day trip to London and walked through the Tate Modern, Kate pointing out techniques she hoped to learn in Florence, while William found historical connections in contemporary works. They had dinner at Bella Vista, the small Italian restaurant near the market square where they had celebrated William's thesis acceptance the previous spring. The owner, an elderly man from Naples, remembered them and insisted on bringing them complimentary tiramisu while sharing stories of his own youthful romance with his wife, who had waited for him during 2 years of military service. "Love finds a way," he said in his heavily accented English, "when it is meant to be." Kate and William smiled politely, but later, walking home through the quiet streets, Kate wondered if the old man's optimism was based on a different era, when communication was slower but commitment was perhaps stronger. One evening in early December, they found themselves back at the oak tree where Kate had first told William about her acceptance to Florence. The weather had turned properly cold, and their breath formed small clouds as they talked. Most students had retreated indoors, leaving the courtyard empty except for a few hardy joggers and dog walkers. "Do you remember," William said, "the first time we sat here together?" Kate smiled. You were trying to convince me that medieval manuscripts were actually more interesting than modern art. And you were trying to convince me that art didn't need to represent anything real to be meaningful. We were both right, Kate said. We usually are, when we're together. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the windows of the surrounding buildings. Kate realized that this was what she would miss most about their relationship. Not just the passion or the companionship, but the intellectual partnership, the way they challenged and supported each other's ideas. I've been thinking, William said carefully, about what we discussed at Sarah's party. About visits. Kate's heart jumped. And I think I could manage to come see you once. Maybe in the spring, during the Easter break. It wouldn't be for long, but... Really? Kate turned to face him fully. You'd do that? Of course I would. I want to see where you're living, meet the people you're working with. I want to see you in your element there. Kate felt tears prick at her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than sadness. Thank you, she said. That would mean everything to me. And, maybe, William continued, you could come back for a visit in the summer, before the second year of the program starts. Kate nodded eagerly. Yes, definitely. I'll start saving money as soon as I get there. They were making plans, Kate realized. Real, concrete plans for maintaining their relationship across the distance. It wasn't a guarantee that things would work out, but it was hope. And hope was more than they had allowed themselves to feel in weeks. As December progressed, their friends began to take notice of their deliberate togetherness. Sarah commented on how they seemed to be savoring each moment. The twins mentioned that they looked at each other differently, as if they were seeing something the rest of them couldn't. Kate supposed they were. They were seeing love through the lens of impending loss, which gave everything a heightened intensity. Their physical relationship changed too, becoming more tender and more desperate at the same time. They made love as if they were trying to memorize each other's bodies, as if touch could create memories strong enough to sustain them through months of separation. Kate found herself studying the way William's hand looked holding hers, the exact shade of his eyes in different light, the rhythm of his breathing when he slept beside her. 2 weeks before Christmas, Kate received her visa approval and her housing assignment in Florence. She would be living in a small apartment near the Oltrarno district, sharing space with another program participant from Germany. The reality of the move suddenly became concrete in a way it hadn't been before. She had an address now, a specific place where she would be living without William. She showed him the paperwork that evening, spreading the documents across his small dining table like evidence of a future that was bearing down on them with increasing speed. It looks perfect, William said, studying the photos of her apartment. Look at that light in the main room. You'll be able to paint there. Kate nodded, but she was thinking about the single bed visible in one of the photos. How strange it would be to sleep alone after months of sharing William's double bed. The neighborhood is supposed to be full of artists and students, she said. Very authentic, according to the program coordinator. You'll fit right in, William said, and Kate could hear him working to sound enthusiastic. Will I? Kate asked. I keep trying to imagine myself there, but it feels so foreign. Not just the place, but the idea of being there without you. William set down the papers and took her hands in his. You'll be fine, he said. More than fine. You'll be exactly where you're supposed to be. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. I know how you light up when you talk about art, how you get completely absorbed in a painting or a technique you're trying to master. You're going to be in a place where that passion is not only understood, but cultivated by some of the best teachers in the world. How could you not thrive there? Kate realized that this was what she loved most about William, his absolute faith in her abilities, even when she doubted herself. He saw potential in her that she sometimes couldn't see, and his confidence had always been a source of strength. I'm going to miss having you believe in me, she said. I'll still believe in you, William replied. Distance doesn't change that. Promise. Promise. That night, as they lay in bed with the acceptance papers and visa documents scattered on the floor beside them, Kate made a decision. She was going to Florence, and she was going to make the most of the opportunity. But she was also going to fight for what she and William had together. Love like theirs was too rare to abandon without a real fight. William, she whispered into the darkness. We're going to make this work. She felt rather than saw his smile. Yes, he said. We are. It was the first time either of them had stated it with such certainty, without qualifications or doubts. And as Kate drifted off to sleep in William's arms, she held on to that certainty like a lifeline, a promise to herself and to him that some things were worth fighting for, even across an ocean. Christmas arrived in Cambridge with an unusual blanket of snow that transformed the ancient city into something from a Victorian postcard. Kate woke on Christmas morning in William's bed, surrounded by the soft gray light that filtered through his small windows, and for a moment she allowed herself to pretend that this was just another holiday they would spend together, with many more to follow. They had agreed to exchange gifts on Christmas morning before joining William's family for dinner in the evening. His parents lived just outside Cambridge in a cottage that had belonged to his grandmother, and they had insisted that Kate join them for what they called a proper family Christmas. Kate suspected that William had told them about Florence, about her impending departure, and that the invitation was their way of making sure she felt loved and included during what might be their last holiday together. William was already awake beside her, propped up on one elbow, watching her with an expression of tender concentration that made her heart skip. "Happy Christmas," he said softly, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Happy Christmas," she replied, noting how the morning light caught the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "How long have you been awake?" "A while. I was watching you sleep." He smiled somewhat sheepishly. "I know that sounds creepy, but I was thinking about how peaceful you look when you're dreaming, and wondering what you'll dream about when you're in Florence." Kate's chest tightened. Even on Christmas morning, the reality of their approaching separation colored everything. "Hopefully I'll dream about you," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "I hope you'll dream about new things," William replied, surprising her. "New places, new people, new possibilities. I hope you'll have dreams there that you've never had before." It was such a William thing to say, Kate thought. Even in his sadness about her leaving, he wanted her to have experiences that would expand her world. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight roughness of morning stubble beneath her fingertips. "I love you," she said, the words carrying all the weight of gratitude and grief that had become their constant companions. "I love you too," he replied. "Now, shall we do presents before I lose my nerve?" They had decided to keep their gifts simple, nothing too elaborate or emotionally charged that would make their goodbye more difficult. But as Kate watched William reach under the small Christmas tree he had set up in the corner of his bedroom, she realized that any gift exchange between them now would carry enormous significance. William handed her a small, wrapped package, rectangular and flat. Kate recognized the careful way he had folded the corners of the wrapping paper, the methodical precision he brought to everything. She opened it slowly, wanting to preserve the moment, and found a leather-bound sketchbook with thick, cream-colored paper. "For Florence," William explained as she ran her hands over the smooth cover. "I thought you might want to document things as you go. Not just the formal work you'll be doing, but the everyday moments. The way the light looks different there, the faces you see on the street, the small details that might get lost in memory." Kate opened the sketchbook to find an inscription on the first page, written in William's careful handwriting. "For Kate, who sees the world in ways that make it more beautiful for all of us. May this book capture wonders I can only imagine. With all my love, W." She felt tears start to gather and blinked them back, not wanting to cry on Christmas morning. "It's perfect," she said, meaning it completely. "Thank you." Now it was William's turn. Kate had agonized over what to give him, rejecting idea after idea as either too romantic or too casual, too expensive or too cheap. Finally, she had settled on something that felt right. A small, framed photograph she had taken of him the previous summer during a picnic by the river. In the photo, William was reading a book, completely absorbed, with dappled sunlight falling across his face through the leaves above. It captured everything Kate loved about him: his intelligence, his thoughtfulness, his ability to find contentment in simple pleasures. But what made the gift special was what she had written on the back of the frame. A list of all the things she loved about him, from the way he made coffee to the way he listened when she talked about her work to the way he could make her laugh even on her worst days. She had spent hours crafting the list, trying to put into words all the qualities that made William uniquely himself. William unwrapped the gift carefully, just as she had, and when he saw the photograph his face broke into the genuine smile she had fallen in love with. But when he turned the frame over and began reading her list, his expression grew more serious. "Kate," he said after a long moment, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Kate replied. "I just wanted you to know. All of it. In case I never get the chance to tell you properly." William set the frame carefully on his bedside table and pulled Kate into his arms. They held each other in the soft Christmas morning light, both understanding that this was a moment they would remember for the rest of their lives, regardless of what the future held. Later that afternoon, they made their way to William's family home through streets transformed by snow. The cottage was exactly as Kate had imagined it, low-ceilinged and warm, with exposed beams and a fire crackling in the stone fireplace. William's mother, Eleanor, welcomed Kate with a hug that lasted longer than usual, and his father, David, pressed a glass of mulled wine into her hands before she had even taken off her coat. "We're so glad you could join us," Eleanor said, and Kate could see where William got his kindness. Christmas isn't the same without someone new to spoil. William's younger sister, Charlotte, was home from university for the holidays, and she immediately drew Kate into the kitchen to help with the final preparations for dinner. As they worked together, peeling potatoes and arranging vegetables, Charlotte kept up a steady stream of chatter about her studies in Edinburgh, her plans for the spring term, and her excitement about a boy she had met in her Victorian literature class. "William told us about Florence," Charlotte said suddenly, lowering her voice. "It sounds incredible. Are you excited?" Kate paused in her potato peeling. "Yes," she said carefully. "It's a wonderful opportunity." "But," Charlotte prompted, clearly sensing there was more to the story. "But, it's complicated," Kate admitted. "Leaving is harder than I expected it to be." Charlotte nodded sagely, as if she understood completely despite being only 19 and never having been in a serious relationship. "Timing is everything, isn't it?" she said. "The right person at the wrong time, or the right opportunity when you least want to take it." Kate was struck by the girl's insight. "Exactly," she said. "How did you get so wise?" "I read a lot of novels," Charlotte grinned. "They're full of people making impossible choices. And how do those usually work out?" "Depends on the author," Charlotte replied. "The romantics usually find a way to make it work out. The realists, well, they're more complicated." Kate wondered which category her own story would fall into, if someone were to write it down. Dinner was a warm, chaotic affair with multiple conversations happening simultaneously around the large wooden table. William's father regaled them with stories from his work as a librarian. His mother shared updates on various family members and longtime friends, and Charlotte entertained everyone with impressions of her more eccentric professors. Kate found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of family dinner, the gentle teasing and comfortable silences that spoke of years of shared meals and conversations. But she was also hyper-aware of William beside her, the way he reached for her hand under the table during his father's more long-winded anecdotes, the way he made sure she always had enough wine in her glass and vegetables on her plate. He was taking care of her the way he always did, but tonight it felt like a special kind of tenderness, as if he were trying to make sure she felt completely loved and welcomed by his family. After dinner, they moved to the sitting room where Eleanor had arranged a selection of family photo albums on the coffee table. "I thought Kate might like to see some pictures of William growing up," she explained, ignoring her son's groans of protest. Kate found herself enchanted by the photographs. William as a serious-faced toddler building elaborate block towers, as a gap-toothed 7-year-old holding up a certificate for academic achievement, as a gangly teenager accepting some sort of history prize at his secondary school. In every photo, she could see traces of the man she knew, the careful concentration, the quiet pride, the slight smile that suggested he was thinking about something amusing. "He was always organizing things," Eleanor said, pointing to a picture of 10-year-old William arranging his younger sister's toys by color and size. "Even as a child, he couldn't bear to see anything out of place." "He still does that," Kate laughed. "His books are arranged both alphabetically and chronologically. It's very impressive and slightly terrifying." "You should see his childhood bedroom," Charlotte chimed in. "He still has his stamp collection organized by country and year of issue." "Charlotte," William protested, but he was smiling. "Some things are meant to be private." "Not when you're dating someone," his sister replied. "She needs to know what she's getting into." The phrase hung in the air for a moment, its present tense suddenly, inappropriate given Kate's impending departure. Everyone seemed to realize it at the same time, and an awkward silence fell over the room. "Well," David said finally, "whoever Kate ends up with is very lucky indeed." It was a kind way to acknowledge the uncertainty of their situation without dwelling on it, and Kate felt a rush of gratitude toward William's father for his tact. As the evening wound down, Kate found herself helping Eleanor with the washing up while William and his father debated something about medieval taxation policies in the sitting room. The kitchen was cozy and warm, filled with the lingering sense of Christmas dinner and the sound of gentle conversation from the other room. "I hope you know," Eleanor said quietly as she dried a serving platter, that you'll always be family to us, regardless of what happens with William. Kate felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you, she managed. That means more than you know. He loves you very much, Eleanor continued. I've never seen him like this with anyone. But I also know that love sometimes means letting someone go to find their path. Is that what you think I should do? Let him go. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. I think you should follow your heart, she said finally. Both of you. And trust that if it's meant to be, you'll find a way to make it work. Kate nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Sometimes love wasn't enough to overcome practical obstacles. Sometimes timing really was everything, and theirs might simply be wrong. The drive back to Cambridge was quiet, with Kate and William both lost in their own thoughts. The snow had stopped falling, but the roads were still treacherous, requiring careful attention. Kate found herself studying William's profile as he concentrated on driving, memorizing the line of his jaw and the way his hair fell across his forehead. Your family is wonderful, she said as they pulled into the narrow street where his flat was located. They love you, William replied. Almost as much as I do. Almost. William smiled as he turned off the engine. Well, I've had more practice. Back in his flat, they sat on his small sofa with cups of tea, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over the room. Kate curled up against William's side, feeling full and content despite the undercurrent of sadness that had colored the entire day. Thank you, she said, for today. For including me in everything. For making me feel like I belong. You do belong, William said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. You'll always belong with us, no matter where you are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the city settling into Christmas night. Finally, William spoke again. I've been thinking about what my mother said, he said, about following our hearts. What about it? I realized that my heart isn't telling me to ask you to stay. It's telling me to love you enough to let you go. Kate felt tears start to gather again, but she didn't try to stop them this time. And my heart is telling me to love you enough to leave, even though it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Then, we're saying the same thing, William said softly. In different words. Kate nodded against his shoulder, understanding finally that this was what love sometimes looked like, not holding on desperately, but having the courage to let go when holding on would diminish the other person's chances for happiness. How much longer do we have? William asked. Kate had been trying not to think about it, but the answer was always there in the back of her mind. 2 weeks, she said. My flight is on January 8th. 2 weeks, William repeated, as if testing how the words felt. What should we do with 2 weeks? Kate thought about their list, the experiences they had planned to share before her departure. Most of them had been accomplished over the past month, but there was one thing left that they hadn't discussed. I want to spend New Year's Eve with you, she said. Just us. Somewhere quiet where we can talk about everything we want to remember. Where did you have in mind? Kate smiled, thinking of the place that had started everything between them. By the river, she said. Where we first met. I want to go back to the beginning. Perfect, William said. It's perfect. As they prepared for bed that night, Kate found herself moving more slowly than usual, wanting to stretch out each moment. Soon she would be sleeping in unfamiliar places, surrounded by strangers, beginning a life that didn't include William. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, and that was enough. She fell asleep holding the sketchbook William had given her, already planning the first drawing she would make. William sleeping beside her on Christmas night, peaceful and beloved, captured forever in graphite and memory. The days between Christmas and New Year passed in a haze of deliberate memory-making and careful avoidance of reality. Kate found herself photographing everything. William making coffee in his tiny kitchen, the view from his bedroom window, their hands intertwined on the small table at their favorite cafe. She was building an archive of their life together, something she could carry with her to Florence like a talisman against loneliness. William had taken time off from his research work, and they spent their days exploring Cambridge as if they were tourists seeing the city for the first time. They climbed the tower of St. Mary's Church for a view over the rooftops, took a punt along the River Cam despite the January cold, and spent hours in the Bodleian Library, where William showed Kate medieval manuscripts he had studied for his thesis. Look at this, he said, pointing to an illuminated letter in a 14th-century psalter. See how the artist used gold leaf to catch the light? It's the same principle you use in your paintings when you add those tiny highlights that make everything seem to glow. Kate studied the intricate design, admiring the way the ancient artist had layered colors to create depth and luminosity. It's beautiful, she said. I never realized how much medieval art and contemporary painting have in common. Art is art, William replied. The tools change, but the desire to capture beauty, to make something meaningful that will outlast us, that's constant across centuries. It was the kind of conversation Kate knew she would miss desperately in Florence. William's ability to find connections between different worlds, to help her see her own work in a broader context, had shaped her thinking in ways she was only beginning to understand. On December 30th, Kate's parents arrived in Cambridge to help her pack and say their own goodbyes. Her mother, practical as always, had brought empty suitcases and a detailed list of everything Kate would need for 2 years in Italy. Her father, more sentimental, spent most of his visit asking William about his research and treating him with the careful kindness of someone who knew they might not see each other again. The packing process was both mundane and heartbreaking. Each item Kate placed in her suitcases represented a choice about what parts of her life in Cambridge were worth carrying forward. She packed the cardigan William had bought her for her birthday, but left behind the cheap umbrella they had shared during countless walks in the rain. She took the books from her favorite art history classes, but left behind the novels they had read together, curled up on his sofa during lazy Sunday afternoons. You can't take everything, her mother said gently, finding Kate staring at a collection of theater programs from shows they had attended together. You'll make new memories in Florence. Kate knew her mother was right, but the idea of making new memories without William felt impossible. How could any experience in Italy compare to the night they had seen Hamlet at the ADC Theater, whispering discussions about the staging during intermission, or the afternoon they had discovered a tiny jazz club where they had danced badly but enthusiastically to a three-piece band? That evening, her parents took Kate and William to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the river. The conversation was carefully pleasant, focusing on Kate's plans for her first weeks in Florence, the courses she would be taking, the professors she was excited to work with. But Kate could see the effort it cost everyone to maintain such relentless optimism about her departure. You must be very proud of her, Kate's father said to William over dessert. It's quite an achievement to be accepted into such a competitive program. I am, William replied without hesitation. Kate has a gift for seeing the world in ways that make the rest of us pay attention. She's going to do amazing things in Florence. Kate's mother reached across the table to squeeze her hand. And William will be here when you come back for visits, she said. Cambridge isn't going anywhere. But Kate caught the look that passed between her parents, the slight uncertainty that suggested they weren't entirely convinced that waiting would be realistic for either her or William. At their age, 2 years was a significant portion of their lives. People changed. Circumstances evolved. The girl who returned from Florence might not be the same person who was leaving Cambridge. After her parents returned to their hotel, Kate and William walked slowly through the city center, postponing their return to his flat where the evidence of her departure, packed suitcases, sorted belongings, travel documents, made their approaching separation impossible to ignore. Tomorrow night, Kate said, linking her arm through his. Let's pretend it's not our last New Year's Eve together. What should we pretend instead? William asked. Kate considered this. Let's pretend it's our first, that we just met, and we're full of anticipation about all the time we'll have together. I like that, William said. A beginning instead of an ending. They spent New Year's Eve day apart, each making their final preparations. Kate confirmed her flight details and transfer arrangements in Florence, while William picked up prints of his favorite photographs of them together, something he said he wanted to have for his flat after she left. They had agreed to meet at sunset by the river, at the exact spot where they had first spoken nearly 2 years before. Kate arrived first, carrying a small backpack with supplies for their evening together, a thermos of hot chocolate, sandwiches, a blanket to sit on. The weather was crisp but clear, with the kind of golden winter light that made everything look painted. She chose a spot on the bank where they could see the water and the path where joggers and dog walkers passed, but where they would have privacy for whatever conversations the evening might bring. William appeared exactly when he had promised, carrying his own bag and wearing the navy wool coat Kate had always loved on him. The sight of him approaching, his face lighting up when he spotted her, made her heart race the same way it had that first day when he had warned her about the aggressive swans. Happy New Year's Eve, he said, settling beside her on the blanket. Happy New Year's Eve, she replied. How was your day? Productive, William said. I organized my notes for next semester, returned some library books, did laundry. Very exciting stuff. Kate laughed. I love that you did laundry. Such a practical way to prepare for emotional trauma. Someone has to keep things running normally, William said with a small smile. If I fall apart, who's going to remember to buy milk and pay the electricity bill? They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light change on the water as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Kate found herself studying every detail of the scene. The way the bare branches of the willow trees created intricate shadows on the bank, the sound of water moving over stones, the distant spires of the university visible through the winter haze. Tell me about the first course you're taking in Florence, William said eventually. Kate pulled out a folder with her program materials, grateful for the distraction of logistics. Renaissance Techniques in Contemporary Practice, she read. We'll be learning fresco painting, tempera preparation, and oil glazing methods that date back to the 15th century. Fresco, William repeated. Like the Sistine Chapel? Exactly. Although I doubt I'll be creating anything quite that ambitious. Kate traced the course description with her finger. The professor trained in a workshop that has been using the same methods for 400 years. Students learn by working on actual restoration projects in local churches. That's incredible, William said, and Kate could hear the genuine excitement in his voice. You'll be literally following in the footsteps of masters. I keep thinking about that, Kate admitted. Hundreds of years of artists learning the same techniques, passing them down through generations. When I'm grinding pigments or preparing a wall for fresco, I'll be doing exactly what someone did in Leonardo's time. And someday you'll teach those techniques to other students, William added. You'll be part of that chain of knowledge. Kate felt a flutter of excitement mixed with terror. If I'm good enough. You're good enough, William said firmly. You've always been good enough. The question is whether you believe it. As darkness fell, they moved closer together on the blanket, sharing the warmth of William's coat. Kate poured hot chocolate from her thermos, and they passed the cup back and forth, watching other couples and groups of friends begin to gather along the riverbank for New Year's celebrations. Do you remember, Kate said, what we talked about that first day here? You were complaining about the light on the water, William recalled. How it kept changing, and you couldn't capture it properly. And you said that maybe the point wasn't to capture it, but to appreciate that it was always moving, always different. Did I say that? That sounds much more philosophical than I usually am. Kate smiled. You were trying to impress me. Was it working? Obviously. They watched a group of university students set up what appeared to be an impromptu party nearby, complete with a portable speaker and bottles of champagne. Kate felt a pang of nostalgia for that kind of carefreeness, the ability to celebrate without the weight of impending separation. What do you think we'll be doing next New Year's Eve? She asked. William was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I think you'll be in Florence, probably at some wonderful party with other artists, speaking Italian and feeling completely at home in a way you never expected. And I think I'll be here, or maybe in London if I've finished my PhD, possibly with friends, but definitely thinking about you. Kate felt tears start to gather. That sounds lonely. Maybe, William said, but not sad. I'll be thinking about you being happy and successful and everything you deserve to be. That's not a sad thought. What if I'm thinking about you too? What if I'm at that wonderful party in Florence, but wishing I was here with you instead? Then, we'll both be exactly where we're supposed to be, William said, missing each other but living the lives we chose. As midnight approached, the riverbank filled with more people. Kate and William found themselves surrounded by the sounds of laughter and conversation in multiple languages, the pop of champagne corks, and the growing excitement of countdown preparations. 5 minutes, William said, checking his watch. Kate felt panic rise in her chest. Once midnight passed, it would officially be January 1st, bringing her departure one day closer. William, she started, then stopped, not sure what she wanted to say. I know, he said softly. I feel it too. Around them, people began counting down from 10. Kate and William looked at each other, both understanding that this moment would be burned into their memories forever. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The riverbank erupted in cheers and celebration. Fireworks began exploding over the city center, painting the sky in brilliant colors that reflected off the water. Kate and William kissed as the world celebrated around them, holding each other tightly, as if they could stop time through sheer force of will. Happy New Year, William whispered against her ear. Happy New Year, Kate replied, then pulled back to look at him. I love you. Whatever happens, I need you to remember that I love you more than I've ever loved anything. I love you too, William said. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you're brave enough to take this chance, even though it's hard. They held each other as the fireworks continued, surrounded by the celebration, but lost in their own world of goodbye. Kate realized that this was the moment she would remember most clearly. Not their final goodbye at the airport, not their last night together, but this perfect, terrible moment when they acknowledged their love and their loss simultaneously. As the crowds began to disperse and the fireworks faded, Kate and William packed up their makeshift picnic and began the walk back to his flat. The new year stretched ahead of them, full of uncertainty and separation, but also possibility. One more week, Kate said as they reached his door. One more week, William agreed. They climbed the stairs to his flat in silence, both understanding that they had crossed a threshold. The new year had begun, and, with it, the final countdown to their goodbye. But, tonight, they still had each other. Tonight, they could still fall asleep together and wake up together and pretend that love was enough to overcome geography and time. Tonight was still theirs. The morning of January 8th arrived gray and drizzling, as if the weather itself understood the solemnity of the occasion. Kate had barely slept, lying awake beside William, listening to the rhythm of his breathing and trying to memorize the sound. Her suitcases stood by the door like silent sentinels, packed and ready for a journey she was no longer sure she wanted to take. William had insisted on driving her to the airport, despite Kate's suggestion that a taxi might be easier for both of them. "I want to see you off properly," he had said, and Kate understood that he needed this final act of care, this last way to take care of her before she became someone else's responsibility. They moved around his small flat that morning with careful politeness, like strangers sharing space. Kate made coffee while William showered. William loaded her luggage into his car, while Kate did a final check for forgotten items. They were both trying so hard to make everything normal that the abnormality of it became almost overwhelming. "Ready?" William asked, jingling his car keys. Kate looked around the flat one last time, at the bookshelf where her art books had lived beside his history texts, at the small table where they had shared countless meals, at the bed where they had slept and laughed and made love and planned a future that was now dissolving like watercolor in rain. "No," she said honestly, "but let's go anyway." The drive to Heathrow took nearly 2 hours through London traffic, giving them one final stretch of time together. They talked about practical things, Kate's flight details, the weather forecast in Florence, the taxi service that would meet her at the airport. Anything but the magnitude of what was actually happening. Halfway through the journey, William reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the past 18 months. Kate held on tightly, focusing on the warmth of his palm against hers, the familiar callus on his index finger from years of taking notes by hand, the way his thumb moved gently across her knuckles. "I have something for you," William said as they sat in traffic near the airport turnoff. "I was going to wait until we got to the terminal, but I think I want to give it to you now." He reached into the back seat and pulled out a small wrapped package, similar in size to the sketchbook he had given her for Christmas. Kate unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather portfolio case with her initials embossed in gold on the front. "For your finished pieces," William explained. "Things you'll want to bring back to show people, or send to galleries, or keep for yourself. I thought you should have something beautiful to keep them in." Kate opened the portfolio to find a small envelope tucked inside, with her name written on it in William's careful script. "For when you need to remember why you went," he said quietly. Kate's eyes filled with tears as she ran her hands over the smooth leather. It was perfect, practical, and sentimental at the same time, exactly the kind of thoughtful gift that made William so impossible to leave behind. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's beautiful. You're going to do amazing things there," William said. "I want you to have something worthy of them." They reached the airport with an hour to spare before Kate's check-in time. William parked in the short-term garage, and they walked toward the terminal in silence, Kate pulling her wheeled suitcase, while William carried her easel and art supplies. The automatic doors slid open with a mechanical whoosh, admitting them to the bright, impersonal world of international travel. The check-in process was surprisingly quick, and, suddenly, Kate found herself with boarding passes in hand, and only her carry-on bag left to manage. William helped her navigate to the security checkpoint, where they would have to say goodbye. The area was crowded with other travelers, families embracing, business people checking phones, the constant background noise of announcements, and conversation. They found a relatively quiet corner near a coffee shop, setting down Kate's bag, and facing each other with the awkward formality of people who weren't sure how to begin the most important conversation of their lives. "So," William said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "So," Kate echoed. They stood looking at each other, both struggling to find words adequate to the moment. Around them, other couples said their goodbyes with varying degrees of drama and emotion, but Kate felt disconnected from all of it, as if she and William existed in a bubble separate from the normal world. "I don't know how to do this," Kate said finally. "Neither do I," William admitted. "I keep thinking there must be a right way to say goodbye to someone you love, but I can't figure out what it is." Kate felt a laugh bubble up, slightly hysterical. "Maybe there isn't a right way. Maybe it's supposed to be impossible." "That would be fitting," William said. "We've always been complicated." "Complicated, but good," Kate corrected. "The best kind of complicated." They moved closer together, and William reached up to touch her face, his fingers tracing the line of her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "I'm going to miss you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to miss you too," Kate replied. "Every day." "Promise me something," William said. "Anything. Promise me that you'll let yourself be happy there, that you won't spend all your time in Florence missing Cambridge. Promise me you'll make friends and try new things and fall in love with the city." Kate felt fresh tears start to fall. "I promise," she said. "But you have to promise me something too." "What?" "Promise me that you won't wait for me. That if you meet someone who makes you happy, you won't feel guilty about it. Promise me you'll live your life, not just exist until I come back." William's expression grew pained. "Kate, please," she said. "I need to know that leaving you doesn't mean ruining your life." "I couldn't bear that." William was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if he were trying to memorize it. "I promise," he said finally. "But I also promise that whatever happens, whatever we both do over the next 2 years, you'll always be the person I compare everyone else to." Kate felt her heart break and mend simultaneously at his words. "That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me," she said. "It's also the truth." The announcement came over the loudspeaker. Passengers for the Florence flight should begin boarding at gate B12. Kate felt panic rise in her chest as the reality of departure became immediate and unavoidable. "I have to go," she said. "I know." They embraced then, holding each other with desperate intensity, trying to compress all their love and fear and hope into a single moment of contact. Kate buried her face in William's neck, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her chest. "I love you," she said into his shoulder. "I love you so much." "I love you too," William replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Always." They separated slowly, reluctantly, both understanding that prolonging the goodbye would only make it harder. Kate picked up her carry-on bag and turned toward the security checkpoint, then turned back for one final look. William was watching her with an expression of such complete love and sadness that Kate had to force herself not to run back to him. Instead, she raised her hand in a small wave, and he waved back, his face breaking into that familiar smile she had fallen in love with. Kate turned and walked toward security, not allowing herself to look back again. As she stood in line waiting to go through the checkpoint, she could feel William still watching her. When she finally passed through and was no longer visible from the other side, she found a seat near her gate and allowed herself to cry properly for the first time all morning. The flight to Florence was long and turbulent, both literally and emotionally. Kate stared out the window at clouds and distant landscapes, thinking about William probably driving back to Cambridge, returning to his flat that would feel empty without her presence. She thought about him making coffee for one, sleeping alone in a bed that had been theirs, continuing his research, and his life in a city where every corner held memories of them together. But she also thought about what waited for her in Florence. The studio where she would learn techniques that had been passed down through centuries, the professors who would challenge her to grow as an artist, the city itself with its layers of history and beauty. She thought about the portfolio William had given her and imagined filling it with work that would make him proud. When the plane finally descended toward Florence, Kate pressed her face to the window and got her first glimpse of the city that would be her home for the next 2 years. The red tile roofs and ancient spires looked like something from a Renaissance painting, beautiful and timeless and completely foreign. As the plane touched down and the other passengers began gathering their belongings, Kate pulled out her phone and sent William a text. Landed safely. Florence is beautiful. Miss you already. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go. His response came quickly. Miss you too. Go be amazing. I'm proud of you. Kate smiled through her tears as she gathered her things and prepared to disembark into her new life. The goodbye at Heathrow had been the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of another. She thought about what William had said by the river on New Year's Eve, about being exactly where they were supposed to be even if it meant missing each other. As she walked through the terminal in Florence, surrounded by the musical cadence of Italian conversations and the warm Mediterranean light streaming through tall windows, Kate realized that she was carrying William with her after all. Not in a way that would hold her back or keep her from embracing new experiences, but as a part of herself that would always belong to their time together in Cambridge. She found her taxi driver holding a sign with her name, and as they drove through the winding streets toward her new apartment, Kate opened the envelope William had tucked into her portfolio. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a poem he had copied out, something by Rilke about love being about protecting each other's solitude, about giving each other the space to grow. At the bottom, in his own handwriting, William had added, "For Kate, who taught me that love isn't about holding on, but about helping each other become who we're meant to be. Fly, darling. I'll be here when you land." Kate folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into the portfolio, understanding finally that their silent goodbye at the airport had said everything that needed to be said. They had loved each other enough to choose growth over safety, possibility over certainty, hope over fear. As the taxi pulled up in front of a narrow building with green shutters and flower boxes, Kate saw a young woman with short dark hair waiting on the steps. Her flatmate from Germany, probably. The woman waved enthusiastically, and Kate waved back, feeling the first stirring of excitement about the adventures ahead. She paid the taxi driver, gathered her luggage, and walked toward her new life with William's love tuck.